And we are back. I actually hit record almost right away this time. And the first thing we're going to do is figure out what the heck is season 22 going to be because we have not figured this out yet. So you get really behind the scenes at this point. Let's see. Do we have notes? Did we think about you threw something out there
Yeah.
on Slack? Season 22 ideas, getting started, first job, early years on the job, when it's time to move up. Oh, life cycle, full career cycle of a developer, which actually sits really well with, if I can find the book itself, I have it here. Yes. Let me go look at the table of contents here, the outline or whatever it was. How well did I write this? Let's see. No, I have. Let's see. Why we need better developers, firm foundation, steady learning, solving problems, understand the business, creating a niche, using tools, earn as you learn, mentors and teammates. That's not quite that level, but it's not a bad idea for a season would be sort of like working our way through what are some like comment. How are we going to do that? So it's not just, I think just describing it's probably not going to be what we want. We probably want to get a little more complicated than that or a little more
Right.
useful sharing, stuff like that. I guess we could do like, I mean, I did do, the lessons learned, which was basically like war stories a little bit, mistakes I've made that we could sort of do it that way. Is we could start, we could do a season. So the first, you know, fourth of it maybe is our, look at like the first quarter of our career to date. Or maybe we could do like 10 episodes that are roughly the first third of our career, then the second third of our career, and then the third third of our career, and then have a couple that are basically like, this is where we see it going kind of thing, and some places you can go and what you can do and how to plan for retirement, maybe that, those kinds of things. I think that would be like, we'd go all over the place with that if we wanted to. Let's keep it sort of in the life cycle of the SDLC, except for the developer life cycle, the DLC, I guess. Very different from downloaded.
Yeah, because I thought, we've kind of touched on different areas of the career. We've talked about different areas of software. Last season was kind of a good, well-rounded, behind the scenes, being a better developer. But I kept asking myself, well, what if you aren't a developer? Or what if you're just starting into coding? Or, what if you're just out of college? Where would you begin? And, how does this journey kind of look like? And this kind of came around from some conversations that the kids and I have been having because, she works for the state and right now they're under a hiring freeze, but she is starting to consider, okay, where do I want to go? Do I want to stay at this job? Do I want to, basically, what do I want to be when I grow up kind of thing? And it made me think back that, we've been talking about being a better developer, kind of jumping in at those that have development knowledge or have already been at this for a while. But we never really talked about, like how we started or getting started kind of. We may have way back, years ago, but I thought this would kind of be like a journey. Like, let's walk them through the journey of a developer, like starting out, where to begin, maybe interview ideas, finding jobs, looking for, what type of topics are interesting to you. Are you a DevOps guy? Are you a software guy? Are, web versus backend? We never, we touch on these things in particular topics, but we never kind of comprehend it in that concept, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about because I don't know if we want to go all the way back and work on and focus on that that specific market or target audience right now. But I am thinking that we could do the same thing and talk about pros and cons of how we approached it and then how to adjust accordingly. Because there are going to be people there's probably people right now listening to us that are developers that did not come up out of the normal set. I know there's a lot that, either had it that's a second career. They went and got a like an art degree, an education degree, or something like that, and then got into development, or they've gone through boot camps, or things like that. There's so many different ways you can get into it, and where there's some strengths where you may want to like. Again, it's actually I think it is a better developer thing because we can talk about like where do you shore up the gaps in your skills, and it doesn't hurt. I think we can mix in there things like what is preparing for an interview and things like that that are I think pretty useful to at any point, any stage. And it's just sort of like our own lessons learned, particularly from us, like interviewing, because we've been on both sides of that several times where we've interviewed, we've been interviewees, we've done tech screenings and things like that. So I think there's a lot we can work with that just keep it. We'll maybe call it the developer journey, and just sort of that gives us a nice title, and then we can just go from there.
Yeah, I kind of like that. The journey is kind of where I kind of had it in mind. It's like, yeah, we don't necessarily need to go all the way back to the beginning, but kind of a more beginning, middle, end kind of structure instead of jumping around kind of like we did. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think this will make this season a little more focused from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think we sort of started Star Wars 4, 5, and 6. So now we'll go back and cover 1, 2, 3, but do it better than they did, and then we'll go more forward and get the rest of it. Cool. I think we can do that. We'll do an overview this time, and then we'll sort of work our way from there.
All right. So is this the introduction to the season, or is
Yes.
this episode 1? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to wing it as I never do. So we'll just sort of figure out how the conversation goes and try to do this and figure it all out this time around. So hello and welcome to season 22. You don't see me holding my little piece thingies up, but hey, that's where we're at. We have started a new season. We didn't even pause from season 21 to 22. I don't remember I think we did from 20 to 21 because we took a year and a half. We're going to try to keep this down to, get a couple seasons a year out. This season, this episode, we're going to talk about the season. This season is going to be the developer journey. We want to get a lot of the pieces in that are the things that are building a better developer, but it's also getting you to become a developer in the first place, in a sense. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the foundational things, and particularly some of the cases where we become developers from so many different areas. It's the different ways that we do it, and then how do we then fill out essentially and flesh out our resume? How do we fill out our skill set? Because you could be somebody who came out of school and you need to get some certifications, or maybe you came out of a boot camp and you want to get some foundational stuff, or maybe you came from a different career and you want to be able to figure out like, where can I go? Yeah, maybe I was a different career. I learned, say, JavaScript, can do a couple web things, but I want to see what else is out there. So this is going to be, in a way, very all-inclusive. But really what we want to do is sort of talk about the developer journey. It's not just building better developers, but it's like, what are some of the stops along the way? Some of the lessons that we've learned. And before I drone on too long, I will introduce myself, especially since it's a new season. I am Rob Broadhead. I am one of the founders of Developreneur. I'm also founder of RB Consulting. So the two things I do, we consult, we do integrations, we do simplification, we do automation, and then I use Developreneur to give back to the community. On the other side of the world, possibly, but definitely on the other side of the internet, but in a little box on my screen is Michael, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, and I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we help small to mid-sized businesses and clinicians build software to meet their custom needs, as well as test software and support and maintenance.
It is really tempting to, after mentioning that small screen, is do like a little squishing your head thing, but I guess I could do it here. I could squish my head, but it's a little different. Anyways, kids in the hall, I think is what it was. Talking about the developer journey, we've come into this just sort of like, where do we want to go with our season? If you look back over 20 plus seasons, there are a lot of areas where we've touched on how do you become a developer? How do you become a better developer? How do you do all the things that turn you into the help you to become a better entrepreneur, that developpreneur side of it as well. We've talked about branding, we've talked about marketing, we've talked about skills, we've talked about projects and interviews and all these different things. But it makes sense to have a little, hopefully, we plan on having a little cohesiveness to this time around. And more like not really a full punch list, but maybe a little bit of an outline of like, here's some things, some topics that you want to think about as you're growing that you may already have, but it's also things that you want to, you want to step back to. For example, I think we've talked recently in these, as I know I've had these conversations, it is the idea of, we've talked about it more on a company level, rebranding, but even within yourself, particularly if you've been doing this for a few years, it's actually rebranding in the way of sense of like your resume or your personal website or your company's website, because there's going to be things that you did 10 years ago that really don't make sense right now. So if you you could be a very, not even cutting edge, but like, let's say just a leading edge developer. 10 years ago, you might have been a leading edge developer using Flash, that you had all these websites and you were using Adobe Air and all that kind of stuff. Basically doesn't exist anymore. No offense to those of you that do it on a daily basis. I know there's a few out there, but not a lot of it out there. So now you maybe have moved on to, let's say, .NET or Java or something like that. You need then to upgrade your resume, your site. And one of the things we'll talk about is like, how do you handle that stuff? Because you are growing, you're becoming a better developer. So when do you sort of like, cut back the stuff that you used to have? When do you drop DOS, 3.0 or, Windows or whatever off of your resume? When do you put like, basic, not Visual Basic, but capital BASIC, basic off of your list? Those kinds of things are what we're going to sort of get into. And a lot of it is really definitely not a science. This is going to be lessons learned. It's where we have seen some things that have confused us or that we've done that have confused others, because we have worked both sides. We have interviewed people. We have been interviewed by a lot of people. We have been through tech screens. We've tech screened people. I think we'll get a lot of that out there. It's like some of our experience and where we've seen things that we feel are done right and where we see some things that are done wrong. And now I say we all the time, and I'm not speaking just in the royal we. So I wanted to have like, why don't you throw a couple of things like where you see this going as well, Michael, because we've got 30 plus episodes ahead of us. So obviously we're going to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, as we go through this journey, we're going to be talking or touching on a lot of the both pain points of our journeys, some of the things that we struggled with, as well as a lot of the things that we learned that, oh, this is a great idea, or how we excelled in some areas, how we struggled in certain areas, and how we basically persevered through some hard times. Because in any developer's journey, you're going to run into situations where it's like, why the hell did I do this? Why am I doing this? And you kind of lose that kind of you lose that emphasis. You lose that spirit of, hey, this is awesome. I'm having fun. Let's do this. Especially like for those of you that are entrepreneurs and doing startups, you always start out with like, I have this great idea. I'm going to do it. And you hit the accelerator, you go, and then you hit a wall. And then you're like, well, now what? I don't want to do this anymore, or it burned out. And these are a lot of things that we have encountered through our development journey. And we're going to try to talk through some of these topics and, help you guys on your journey of becoming better developers. I mean, you could be a junior, you could be a mid-level, hell, you could be like us, you could be 20 plus years in this industry, and still we're always learning. This journey never ends until you either retire or basically you decide to throw your computer out the window and become a monk.
And I think it's important that this is not this is a journey that never ends. We're constantly having to update and keep going. And honestly, I don't know how many times I've thrown my computer out the window, become a monk, and the next thing you know, I'm writing code in the monastery, and then I'm back again. And so, I think that's something else that that's definitely another area we want to talk about is the Uh, so I keep thinking Lion King Circle of Life, but there's a little bit of like there's seasons of our development. I think that I know for me that I've been through where, and it does seem cyclical, where it's like you get into a much like software development life cycle. I think in general, that you'll get into seasons where you're doing a lot of coding, or you're doing a lot of maybe you're doing some project management or some team management. Maybe you're in a lot of agile, then maybe you're in a lot of like just straight web-based applications. Maybe you're doing a lot of mobile. It's just those kinds of things that I also want to talk about, like what we do when we're in a certain season to make sure that that doesn't become a rut. Because a lot of this is about us looking at what do we accept? What do we have to accept basically as developers? Because there's certain things that are just part and parcel of being a developer. Whatever you know today is going to disappear. Doesn't matter how long it is. Now there are foundational things, and I do want to spend some time on that because I think that's something that has served me well. Is a very strong foundation in software development to start with, and I'm talking about things like understanding what collections and the various patterns are, and some of those like basic concepts of like how do you do logic, like what is the logical arithmetic and some of those kinds of things, and even like vectors and data storage things and stuff that you may or may not know, or you may have come into it in a very specific way, like a lambda or something like that, that you may have a very different view of what that looks like from actual like Bison and all those, and Yak and all those other kinds of things that are about building languages. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot that I want to talk about, and I think we're going to try to do it. We'll try to do it like a sort of like a nugget at a time. We'll try to take off a good chewable amount to say, here's something we've done. Here's some of our experience, and throw some recommendations out there as well. Now, as always, we do want to get feedback from you. So if you've got some things, something that's like maybe a big lesson learned in your career that you would love for us to share, or a question like, hey, I'm stuck. I'm sort of like I've hit a ceiling, or the one that everybody runs into is there's sort of that fork in the road where there's some point where you can go much more, you can go into like management, or you go into higher end architecture stuff. Now, some companies don't even have that. Sometimes it's just like you top out and you're just going to write code, write code, write code. You just get to write more code or something like that, or write it faster versus, hopefully it's a large enough organization that you're in that allows you to manage or design and architect solutions. I see you in the back with your hand up.
So it's interesting with that as well. We can also talk about not just those kind of transitions, but also talk about when you're in a position or a role and you're starting to get into a rut or things become toxic. When to identify, when is it time to either shift gears and start looking for different positions, or even start looking for different companies? Because there are times where, while we're enjoying this journey, we are going to run into situations where we are not going to be happy. But we, as developers, a lot of times though, we try to persevere because we like solving problems. That's the whole thing about writing software. But sometimes the problem isn't us. The problem isn't something we can solve. And then it's time to like look at the door. Is it time to go somewhere else? So these are some of the things we can address this season as well.
That's a great, now granted, sometimes the problem's not me, it's always Michael. But for the rest of you, I think this is something, that is something that I think there, boy, every season of development and progression that you're in, that is something that gets handled a little differently. And I think just to sort of to wrap this one up, is I will flash back a little, looking back at some of the things that I did starting out. And I've seen this with a lot of other people as they start out. So it's sort of to give you like a slice of life of some of the kinds of things we're going to talk about. When I started out, I had a college degree. I had a bachelor's in computer science. So I knew some stuff about programming, and I had just come out of school. So I knew some academic stuff about programming. Now, you may say, I never, went to school for it. I went to like maybe a boot camp. Well, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to come out of that boot camp with the boot camp shine. You're going to have like this certain thing that you've done some work. You've built applications probably of some sort, but you've done it in a lot of times sort of like a pristine environment. You are set up in your projects and you are graded on like you've got to do it right the right way. And the right way is whatever that book or that professor or whatever, and it's a lot of it is based on the goals they want to accomplish. What do they want you to understand coming out of that class? And when I came out, I had like, this is the stuff that I know. And at that point, object oriented, there was no agile. This was like way back. You didn't really have that yet. It was close to that time, but you did have object oriented, and object oriented was the thing. That was like object oriented languages and inheritance and all this stuff. Everybody was just like in awe at what you could do with object oriented because they come out of, at this point, everybody was functional based. So you had all this stuff, you had all this repetitive code, you had all this just crud that you had to sort through. So when I walked into the real world and walked out of my academic environment, that was in my head. And I will once again apologize to anybody that worked with me at the time because every problem to me, because the hammer that I had was object oriented and that was the tool I had. So I used that on everything. It didn't matter if it was a awk script, if it didn't matter if it was batch programming. I tried to find a way to take that big square peg of object oriented and slam it into a round hole over and over again. And I'm going to claim, ask for forgiveness and all that, and also claim that it's not my fault because everybody does that because we do. It's affected my career ever since because I think we do. We get this thing that's a really shiny new tool, and then we really want to use it. Now, when we come out of school, we have one tool, so we don't really have a lot of choice. Or, we have like a couple, but we're really focused. But as you get further into your career, you'll find that you get that shiny tool again, and you're like, I really want to use this. It's like if you go get a new coffee cup, you want to have that. You're like, I want coffee right now because I want to use my new cup. That's something that we struggle with, I think, more than we would like to admit. And that's one of those things that we will come back to this at some point in this season and talk about such things because we do have a struggle. There is a balance of we don't want to lose it. We don't want to have something that we learned and then not use it and then we lose it. But we also don't want to bore everybody with telling about how we've got this great new silver bullet solution and then it doesn't work. And there's a lot of those in the history of what I've worked through. So I'm sure this is not going to be all about failures and mistakes. We did a season on that, but this is going to be about a little bit about lesson learned, but a really more about, it's more like these are some things we've done. It's our experiences. So hopefully you'll be able to connect with where you have done some of this stuff, and some of it will be new. There'll be some things like, I've never done something that way, so I'm going to go give that a shot. Closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, a lot of this is, again, this is the development journey season. So we are going to be talking about journeys through the career of becoming a better developer. And our hope is that by the end of this season, you will have something to take away, even if it's small, but something like me, that every day you look at what you're doing and you want to learn something new. You want to better yourself. You want to become better.
I think that is well put and a perfect way to wrap up this first episode of season 22. I'm still getting my head around this, that we're like that far into this thing. I hope you come back and enjoy us on our journey as we talk about the developer journey. As always, shoot us an email at info@developerpreneur.com if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, jokes. Even if they're dad jokes, we'll take them all. May or may not share them because if they're too punny, then it may just be a little too much for us. Also have the YouTube channel. We have developerpreneur.com. We're out there on X. We are out there on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Wherever you get your developerpreneur material, we're there. Podcasts as well. Wherever you consume your podcasts, you probably, hopefully right now you're listening to it, but subscribe wherever it is. Get all of the latest stuff. We're cranking this out twice a week, and it'll just make it easier for you to keep up with us. You can always ask the lady in the box, also known as Alexa, at some point, just, hey, give me the latest episode of Building Better Developers. And you know what? You'll get to hear our dulcet tones come across the whatever the device is you're listening on. That being said, we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to go take a break, come back, Season 22, episode 2 will be next. So we will catch you next time around. Go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. And a wave to those of you that didn't, but yeah. It's also a good little signal to be like, cut. All right, there goes the that's the audio. For the rest of you, you get to see the video. I don't know if there's any bonus material you want to throw out there, anything that's like sort of a extra bonus highlight, secret like secret eggs that we're gonna have somewhere, or out Easter eggs we're gonna have somewhere in the season. It's like keep an eye out for this one.
But the only extra thing I would like to add, since this is our introductory episode to the season, is we didn't touch on it, but we also have schoolofdevelopreneur.com. We have tons of material on the website. We have launching an internet business for those of you that may not have a website or a business. Make sure you go out and check that. It's free. We walk you through the entire setup of setting up AWS, WordPress, and basically putting up a website for free. Check this stuff out. We've got tons of material out there. And if you've thought about it, chances are we've either talked about it or we've probably done it. Or if we haven't, shoot us an email or a text, or, just communicate to us what you would like us to talk about. And hey, we may throw it on an episode or we might drop it in the blog.
Yeah, sometimes some of our best topics are, I haven't done that. I would really like to try it. Let's go give it a shot. And next thing you know, we'll have some tutorials or maybe even a whole season on it, depending on what it is. We will wrap this one up and we will come back around soon. Just like I mentioned, every Tuesday and Thursday, we drop these things. We have them on. You can get us out on the podcast, or you can join us here on YouTube, or if you're somewhere else, like a Chinese YouTube or wherever you're seeing this, you could go to the original at YouTube or whatever this pirate channel is that you're watching. And actually, if you are, love to hear about it. Just be really interested to know that we are somewhere else, especially if we're being dubbed. That would be awesome. I would love to hear somebody dubbing us in Swahili or whatever the language happens to be. That being said, we'll let you guys get to it. We're going to go back to it, and we will come back with episode 2 a couple days from now, basically. When you next swing around, we will be cranking in to season 22. Have a good one.